Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's IMC webinar. I'm Hélène, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. At IMC, the International Mentoring Center, we are passionate about empowering professionals through mentoring, leadership development, and community building. Our mission is to create transformative experiences that help individuals and organizations thrive by sharing stories, skills, and support. We believe in the power of authentic connection and learning from one another, and that's exactly what today's webinar is all about. We are thrilled to welcome our speaker today, Stephen Buescher. Stephen is the CEO of Global Summit Events, GSE, a transformational coach, speaker, and author with a unique focus on emotional resilience, storytelling, and wellness. His work brings together changemakers from around the world through powerful summits and events designed to foster mindful living and emotional regulation. Stephen brings a wealth of experience in helping professionals and mentors clarity, presence, and resilience, especially in high-pressure environments. Today's session will offer us valuable tools for navigating our mentoring goals with confidence and calm. Here is what you can expect to gain from today's webinar. Tools from stress reduction and emotional resilience that you can start applying right away. Empowered leadership practices that support purpose-driven mentoring. Insights on how well-being influences effective mentorship and how your energy directly impacts those you support. Daily strategies and reflective practices to stay grounded and centered in both your personal and professional life. A few quick notes before we begin. The webinar will last about 60 minutes. Please feel free to use the chat or Q&A feature to send your questions. We will leave time at the end to address as many as we can. This session is being recorded and will be available to you after the webinar. And now, without further delay, I'm happy to hand the virtual floor over to Stephen Buescher. Stephen, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Elaine. And thank you to the International Mentoring Center for this wonderful opportunity. One of the things that I am thankful for is the idea and the opportunity to help people shift their life. And that's why I shifted from engineering and started working in the area of mental wellness, and also started learning about hypnotherapy and ways that we can change the way we interact with the world. So looking forward to talking about the empowered mentor and how we can have a difference, not only on our mentee-mentor relationship, but how we influence people in this life. So shall we get started?
Yeah, sure.
So let me share the screen. Well, today's talk is called The Empowered Mentor, and it's leading with calm, clarity, and connection. When I first started making this shift and transition in my life, the path of self-awareness and learning some of these skills, people would come to me and they would come speak with me before big events. I had someone that ran the entertainment center for a very large facility. It was one of the large casinos. And they called me up one time and they said, I'd like to have a meeting with you because I feel more calm in your presence. And I thought, what are you talking about? Because I don't feel calm. But what I learned, and this is something that actually I found that we can replicate, we can actually teach others the skill. It's this idea that if you are in a place of energy, of calmness, other people will sense and notice that. And you don't even have to feel that within yourself. Other people will recognize that externally. And I think that's a very important skill, that as a mentor, to recognize the qualities in other people that they don't see in themselves yet. So what I'd like to draw upon a little bit is, my background has led me from being a problem solver of technology, of systems, and life happened to me. And I realized that we can have an influence on those around us, especially on our own quality of life, by paying attention, by noticing. And in this process, I actually started the Global Summit Events community to help people find their voice, to help them share what's most important to them. And in this process, I'm also an author. I participated in the anthology Beyond Boundaries, Thriving in Life's Gray Zone. In that, my section of that book was about the process of learning to establish boundaries. Because if you haven't grown up in a family or an environment where that is modeled, we don't actually teach those skills. So that's something really important for the mentor-mentee relationship, is teaching some of these soft skills, some of the leadership skills, because those are the things that will help people excel in life, to get beyond the stress and to actually do better in not only career but in family relationships and in overall quality of life. And I'm also a coach. I love this idea of helping other people. When it comes to emotional regulation, and I guess it's the idea that before you can lead others into calm, we have to experience it ourselves. I mean, this is going back into this idea of having that experience. I've been teaching people about this concept of embodied understanding. And what comes to me is, until you experience something, it's hard to make sense of it. It's hard for you to understand what that means. And some of these things are ideas like confidence, assertiveness. It can also be things like, boundary setting. Once you start doing it, you get better at it, and you start understanding exactly what that means. So the biggest thing I'd like you to take away from this is, if you can have a better quality of life, especially your relationship with stress, your relationship with self-awareness, by leveling up your quality of life, by noticing, that will help you be more present. It'll help you remove some of the biases. It'll actually make you a better mentor for those around you. So let's talk about this idea of shifting. Since we're talking about embodiment, one of the things that I do before each one of the meetings that we have within the Global Summit event community is, we actually have a grounding exercise. And one of my associates, he's writing the a leadership book with me. There's 4 of us that are participating in this. What we found is that by doing these grounding exercises, especially like in the corporate environment, people may resist in the beginning, but once they experience that shift of presence, becoming, more attentive, then it allows them to show up better, to listen better, to hear better, and to be a better overall person when it comes to communicating. And it also, when it comes to having more depth in ideas. So what we'd like to do here is, we're going to just do a quick little grounding exercise. And if you're doing anything that requires your full attention, just kind of tune this out. But if you are able to sit comfortably, maybe close your eyes, go ahead and participate as much as you can. So sit comfortably. I invite you to put your feet flat on the ground, maybe let your shoulders soften. Notice any tension that you might have in your body, and just soften that area slightly. If it's comfortable, maybe you could soften your gaze or even close your eyes. It's up to you what is most beneficial. And then breathe in slowly through your nose, and then gently out through your mouth. As you breathe, find something that feels grounding or feels freeing, whatever is most beneficial to you. Maybe let go of any tension that you notice. Notice where you carry it within your body. Some people carry it within their chest. Some people carry it within their stomach or abdomen. Some people carry it in their hips or legs. Notice any tension that you might have. If it's in your shoulders, release that. And come back to this moment, just breathing through. Now I invite you to picture yourself in a mentoring session. See the person sitting across from you. Notice their face, their posture. Imagine that they're sharing something important. I invite you to see yourself listening deeply, calm, focused, not needing to fix anything, creating space. Feel the calm in your body. Notice how you are relaxed. And imagine the person across from you softening, feeling safe, and matching your calm. As you're going through this process, notice what it feels like to have that connection as they share, as they find new insights. is they feel more capable and more able to handle what is ahead. You might even see them discovering their own ideas and shifting in how they feel. You might sense pride and gratitude in being able to mentor from this place of presence and just enjoy that feeling of gratitude. Why it is that we do what we do. And take one more deep breath in and out. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes, bringing yourself back to this calm and bring intention back into this session. So one of the things that we did there is it's related to some of the core competencies of the International Mentoring Center. It's this idea of mindset shift. It's this idea of continuous learning. So I would like to invite you as we go through these slides to notice what core competencies come up for you, which ones are valid, and you can put them in the chat if you see them. And I don't have the chat, so if you see something, Aline, please feel free to share that.
Yes, I can.
All right. So why are we talking about this anyways? This is something that's interesting. We're talking about emotional resilience, especially related to stress. One of the things that I look at is that we are physiological beings. We will have triggers that happen, and it's unavoidable. There's certain things that will trigger our everyday experience. One of those is rejection. Another one is criticism. Those are things that I think are related to our social structure as people. And I think it goes back to the time that we were dependent on that tribe for our survival. And so it makes sense that we would feel the stress response. We would feel fear. We would have concern and worry if we were tossed out of the tribe, if we were judged, if we were rejected. And so the thing that I'd like to focus on here is we will have those moments. And the idea is stress is not, it's something that is unavoidable. And actually, in many cases, it's good. If we didn't have some level of stress, we wouldn't wake up in the morning. That's the thing that gives us the dose of cortisol that starts everything going in the morning. That's why we like coffee too. It mimics that response. But how we experience it is optional. We don't want to create suffering to be in this place of constant stress. That's when you get the adrenal overload. That's when you get into burnout. So the idea is, how can we have this in a beneficial way and then bring in some of those positive chemical components like oxytocin that will turn what could be stressful into something that's more exhilarating, some sense of success. Going along with this, it's this idea that since we have this physiological response, it's part of our base level brain. It's not about mastery. It's about learning to manage living. And what that means is we'll never get to a point where we are untriggerable. We'll get better at our responses. But the biggest thing that we're focused upon is, how can we be more resilient? How can we bounce back faster when something happens that we're not expecting, or something happens that causes us a little bit of distress? So when we go into this idea, the metaphor that I started with when I first started learning, my background is that I am sensitive in nature, and I'm also an overthinker because being an engineer, I was always thinking about everything. I had a very strong critical thought narrative in my mind, that critical thought loop that goes in. And so when I say I'm sensitive, what that means is I feel the chemistry within my body, and there's a lot of people out there like that. But what I want to do is, most people say, oh, you're too sensitive, or you need to change who you are. And I say, no. I say that that's a gift, because if you can regulate your emotions, I believe that those people that are sensitive, not only is that the spice of life, but what comes from that is that once you regulate it, you have that ability, like great actors or singers that can sway your emotions. If you can regulate your emotions, you can actually have influence over others and help them have a better quality of life. And so on the top of the surface, we've got this ocean of emotion, the storm that's raging. But the first thing I learned is if we go deep, that is where we'll find peace. It's always calm the deeper you go. When we first start looking, at life, we tend to look externally to what's going on, where the threats are. And as we become more self-aware, we realize that all the answers are found within. So that is that first step of self-awareness. And if you want to be an effective mentor, the most important thing that you can do is to grow in personal development for ourselves, each and every one of us. And I don't know what happened to my slide here. And so the idea here is that I'll just go through what those are. The idea is that self-awareness comes by shifting from external to internal. And also there's a practice that we can go from shifting from why to what. So it's this idea of most of the time when something bad happens, we're wondering, why did this person act that way? Why did this happen to me? And if you are an overthinker, you can get caught in a thought loop of things that do not make sense. This is quite critical when you're dealing with maybe someone that's on a toxic personality scale or a person that has a completely different style of communication. So the idea is that if we can recognize that, the shifting from why to what, the idea is notice what you are feeling. Notice the experience that you're having. So as you notice that, you might notice a stress, or you might notice a tension, that there might be some physical feeling that you're experiencing that came from a trigger. And what I'm asking people to do is to not consider what was done. I'm asking you to go deep and look at this question of what are you actually experiencing in this moment? And as you do this, what you'll notice is as you pay attention to that, by breaking that link to the reinforcement of that chemistry, that will start dissipating just like a cloud. As it dissipates, your body is slowly learning this concept of emotional regulation, because you'll notice that as you have something happen, you can notice the shift of your experience. That brings us into this idea. This is something that I've learned within the hypnotherapy practice that I do, the studies. And I study with several different well-known hypnotherapists. One of them is Rob McNeely. He studied with Milton Erickson, who was the gentleman that brought hypnotherapy into the modern day therapy for psychology. And it's this idea that what we experience, our connection with others is quite powerful. It's where you place your attention and your focus. We're social beings. And so as we self-regulate, other people will adopt that energy from around us. And I do believe that we are mood averaging creatures, that if you're in a group of people, the mood will tend to find a common ground between all the people. They say we're the average of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. And what I believe is that we're also our emotions are the average of what we are experiencing the most, where we place our attention and our focus. And so if we're going to bring this in from hypnotherapy, there's 2 things that define a trance. One is focus and the other one is absorption. Where you place your focus and how much you are immersed or absorbed into that state will define your experience. So the idea here is if something's painful, in hypnotherapy, we don't talk about the pain. We shift the awareness to a place where there is no sensation or even a positive sensation. I had a client that experienced great relief from pain by floating down a river up in Canada, but they had a problem with their ankle, so they couldn't do that anymore. And the winters are quite cold in Canada, so they couldn't do it all year long. But by remembering that one experience where they had great pain relief, it allowed them to feel differently and to actually have, the reason they came to see me is because they could no longer take the medication. They had crossed that threshold of addiction, and they could no longer actively get pain medication for what was causing them pain. And when they found that they could do this with their mind and their focus and their awareness, it changed everything for them. So if we're talking about someone that's dealing with a difficult situation or something that's stressful at work or stress, the way that we change our focus and our attention can change everything. So if we're going to do this, this is something that we do quite often within, and it's a little bit of an idea. If you look at this slide, what do you see? And most of my clients will say, I see a dot. And that's all they see. That's the only thing that's on the page. When you ask them, what's on this page? They say the dot. But in reality, you have all of the white space around that. And that white space can encompass all of the possibilities, all of the things that are good, all of the things that might work. And as a mentor, there's more than one approach for the things that we do. It's connecting with your mentee. It's listening to them. It's helping them in the area of confidence. It's helping them in the area of self-development. It's empowering them to make the decisions and to grow in the area that's most beneficial for them. And so if we consider all of the space around this, there actually is infinite possibilities that exist. And one of my Buddhist friends said that even within the dot, there is infinity. And as he said that, it kind of invited me to look at it like as a tunnel. If you can go through the dot, then you can come up with anything is possible. So when we're talking about shifting our focus and our attention, the best thing that we can do as a mentor is to shift from control to awareness, right? It's not trying to change what you're noticing. And what I found is that, emotions are like energy, they're like wind, they're like waves. You can't resist it. It's going to move through it. You cannot stop it. But when you resist it, it will persist. It'll actually become stronger because it takes your energy and it uses that energy to keep moving forward. So the more you resist, it still moves. And it's just the more you resist, the more difficult it is. And the more rigid you are, the more stress you'll experience. But what you accept transforms. And I think this is a place of peace. The energy of our emotions do come from us. But there's a place of acceptance. And if you accept something, it doesn't mean that you say that it's okay. You just say, okay, this is how things are. And then you can start getting into the mindset and the framework of what can I do to influence this? What can I do to make things better? So an example of this idea of, the power is consider a wave. If you try to resist a wave, especially a big wave, it's going to knock you over and it's going to come down with great force. But if you change your perspective, if you have a little bit of flexibility in that perspective, it can change your experience. Now, just consider anyone that's a surfer. If you've got any people in the group here that are surfers, what do you see when you see this wave? And it's this idea that most people would think, oh, that's the most beautiful wave, and they'd get excited. They'd be so happy. I've actually seen people that when there's a storm coming through here in North Carolina, they drive to the coast with their surfboards because they want to experience that exhilaration of riding that wave. So there's a couple different tools that we can talk about, and I don't know why it's flashing like that, but the resilience tools are first belief. And what I mean by belief is it's having that realization. It's having the realization that it is possible. So what this means is if you think that something can happen, then we can turn it into a skill. We can practice it and get better. Some of the most common resilience tools are breath work. And I even catch myself doing this. If something really difficult happens, something very stressful, I'll remind myself, I'll actually tell myself, Steve, remember to breathe. Another one is a grounding exercise. It can be taking your shoes off and walking out in the grass. And as an engineer, sometimes I'm a skeptic for different things. And I just found out from a really well-known nutritionist that studies the metabolisms of the body, carotenoids, the oxidation and how that works. Oxidation is when the body is missing an electron or has an extra electron. Grounding actually allows transfer of electrons with the earth, and it helps us. This is something that I learned, that plaque within our body, it's not it's not the fact that you've got the cholesterol in your body. The problem is that it's an oxidized cholesterol. It has a charge, and so the macrophages get stuck. And the last one is this idea of emotion. I put emotional labeling, but I really prefer emotional noticing. It's not judging what you feel like, and it's saying that how I feel is how I feel, and that's okay. And it's realizing that that will shift over time, but it's not judging yourself. It's not trying to control it. It's not labeling yourself as bad. So noticing what you are experiencing and just moving through that. When we're looking at stress reduction, and stress is a very common thing that everyone faces because there's a lot of pressure on each of us to perform, to do better. And so not only for ourselves, but our mentees often face, deadlines, group dynamics, difficult people, difficult situations. And one of the ways that you can think about this is use the ROOMS acronym, which is to reduce stress, start with routine, and then try to unplug as much as you can, because a lot of the news, a lot of the scrolling that happens can feed into that stress triggering algorithm that we have within our body. And the M stands for meditate or move. I mean, it can be something as simple as a walk might allow you to feel better. And remember, our chemistry, how we feel, is highly impacted by what we eat and exercise. There was a study, omega-3s have a huge impact on our mental health and our brain health. And so if you can pay attention to your supplements, to the way that you eat, the way that you exercise, it can have a huge impact on how you can manage and handle stress. And the last one is sleep. Sleep has the biggest direct correlation to your stress levels. And it's strange because the more stressed people are, the less they sleep, which causes them to be stressed more. And so it's finding a creative way to shift your mind and realize that you can't do anything about it in that moment. So when we're looking at another little technique, we have there's a three by three pause practice, and that's taking the 3 breaths, and then it's having 3 awareness questions, and then it's moving into 3 intentions. So like the 3 questions could be something as simple as, what am I feeling? What do I need? Or what matters most right now? If you move into those areas where you're breathing and you're shifting into that experience, then you can set 3 things that you would like to make an intention of, what you'd like to focus your energy towards, what you would like to focus your efforts towards, and most importantly, what you'd like to focus your thoughts towards. Another exercise is this idea of the inner compass. It's leading with purpose. And what I like to do is I like to actually create a little compass where your north points towards your purpose, and your east might relate to the vision that you have. The south is considering all of the support that you have in your life, within your friendships and all of that. And west can be reflection. What can I do better? What can I experience? And when we go from that, if you can lean your people towards this, it can help them realize that they've got a lot more going for them than is not. And so if you look at the next level, most of us want to fix. We want to give advice. We want to change what's going on, especially if somebody's in a place of difficulty or struggling. And what I've realized in life is that, especially in the work that I do, is that it's this idea of predetermination. People will be as they are. And the best thing that we can do as humans, is the best thing we can do as mentors, is to accept them where they're at and to empower them to make the shift that they want to make. We realize that you can't make any change in anyone until they choose to make that change themselves. So this idea is, we need to move away from trying to fix things and start becoming a facilitator. A facilitator doesn't have the answers. the facilitator facilitates the group of people to come up with their own answers and to learn from each other. We let go of solving everything, which takes a huge burden off of us. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to know the answer. We just simply need to be curious. The next thing that is positive is to facilitate insight and self-discovery. It's this idea of having belief in the positive and possible outcome, and then to move from there to something greater. And eventually, once the mentee experiences this, it will change everything for them. So I'd like to also toss in this idea of emotional contagion. We've heard this concept before, that the energy that you have influences the energy of the room, right? So somebody can come in, they can either be a wet blanket, that's what we say here in the United States. They can either be a wet blanket, or they can be the light of the party. They can elevate the energy. So that's really important, because not only do the way that people come into the space affect others, but your mentee's energy, their presence, can affect you. So one of the things that I'd like to stress here is that you also need boundaries for yourself. As a mentor, there's a line that needs to be drawn when somebody's struggling, when somebody's going through a difficult situation. The most important thing you can do is to protect your own energy, your own presence, because the best thing for you is to be your best self and to believe in the other and to inspire them to be more, even when they're going through a difficult situation. So we're talking about this idea of daily practices for centering, for shifting your energy, for noticing, for growing in self-awareness. There's a story that we talk about with one of the the hypnotherapy class with Ron McNeely, and there was a famous violinist that was the top in the world. And at 98, he was still practicing daily for 3 to 4 hours. And someone came in and asked him as a reporter and said, don't you think, since you're the best in the world, that you can, and that you've been doing this for so long, that you can stop, that you can give up the practice? And he kind of smiled at the reporter. He said, I'm just starting to get it. And he said it because he loved what he did. And each time he practiced, he got a little bit better. He noticed something new, and it added to his life. So when we're talking about these ideas of daily practicing for centering, there's this idea of a morning intention. When you wake up first thing in the morning, and some people need to shift awake a little bit more, but if you are the type where you can have a little bit of awareness, even there while you're just waking up, if you notice your energy level, if you notice how you are, then what you can do is you can have that be your baseline for the day. And you can teach your mentees to do this as well. Because no matter what happens during the day, no matter what bad things or triggers or emotional experiences happen, you can always come back to that energy that you were during that morning when you first woke up. And that will fluctuate over time. Some days you'll have more positive energy, and some days you might feel more drained. But you can always come back to that baseline. And with practice, that can be something that you remember to do. You can also do something called a midday reset. You can actually set in your calendar that you're going to take a break, like we did with the grounding exercise. You can listen to something, a meditation or something that will shift your energy. And sometimes that stress is enough to change the day. One of my friends works for a very large software company. He's the manager over a very high production technical team, and a lot of stress. And what he says is sometimes he'll face a problem. He'll work on it all morning and not be able to find the solution. When he finally gives up and goes for a walk around the block, he'll come back and he'll solve that problem in 10 minutes. It's moving away from the problem sometimes will give us the clarity of mind to actually see what is the real problem. And we can teach our mentees that as well. When you end the day, I have a thing I call a gratitude box. I put in this box all the things that are positive for me and the things that I want to be thankful for. And that's really nice because it reminds me of all of the positive things that have happened during the day. And when I go back and look at that, sometimes those are the things that you can look at that will lift your energy higher, especially when something's gone wrong. So if you've got a mentee that has an accolade that they've done something right, keep that in a file. And if something goes wrong, have them go back and look at that file of where people appreciated them, where they did something right, where they felt good about who they were and they felt accomplished. Sometimes that simple shift of personal perception can change everything for the way that people show up. And we also have this idea of a digital sunset, right? It's realizing that we can take and put a break to the information coming in. If we want to limit our stress, we cannot work 24/7. And we need to teach our mentees and our people that there is a thing called work-life balance. We need to prioritize living. And by prioritizing living, then we can actually be more effective at our jobs. We can be more effective in the world, and we can be more successful. So if we're going to look at the overall concept of what we're talking about here, it's looking at the big picture. Now, what I want to tell everyone is that what I'm sharing is just an idea. It doesn't mean that it's right for everyone. It doesn't mean that it's exactly the way that needs to be done. But what my hope is that you see that there's a possibility and that you become curious. Become curious about what works for your mentee, what works for you, and start noticing how you can have a more positive influence over your experiences, your communications. And before we go into the mentor's map here, I want to also remind people that there's two kinds of mentees that we can have. And this is the same is true for the two kinds of coaching. There's the people that you can work with, and there's people that you can't. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of different types of mentors. There's a lot of different types of personalities. It's not a failure if you can't work with someone. When you realize that there's something that's a mismatch, whether it's communication style, whether it's where it's goals or drive or all of it, it can be a whole host of different things. The important thing is to find the right mentor for the right mentee. And if you approach it in that way, and realize that it's not a personal failure if there's not a match. What that does is it frees you from being exhausted at the end of the day. What you want to do is in your relationships, you want to feel good about who you're working with. You want to feel good about the work that you're doing. And if there's something that's causing you great distress, that's important and you should pay attention to it. And that might be a good time to talk to a mentor, get some more training, but realize that we can't be all things for all people. And it's finding those that we can work with is one of the most important things that we can do. So if we're looking at the mentor's map, it's this idea of having these skills, these tools that we can use. And it's the idea about remembering to breathe. Your anchor should be what makes me feel better, what triggers that parasympathetic nervous system that releases the fight, flight, freeze response that we have. And we know that this is studied. We know that things like exercise work. We know that breathing works. We know that meditation works. And one of the ideas that come forward from that is that if we know what our values are, we can link what we're doing to our core values, and that can also link to what your mentee is focused on. This works really well with people that are people pleasers. If you've got a mentee that's a people pleaser, the challenge is everyone says just say no. Well, if you've got somebody that's a highly agreeable person, they don't want to say no. They want to say yes. So the way that you can switch this is to say yes to their values. You can say yes to something that's greater than the no. So in effect, they're making space by not doing something that's causing them stress or difficulty, and they're making space for something that's more important to them. And if they are actually saying yes to their values, that will be enough reward in itself. They won't feel drained. They won't feel like they're doing something that's not beneficial. It will actually help them. And then you can use that compass approach, the idea of having the north, south, east, and west. Remember the positives, the structure, the people, the social structure that you have, your purpose, the community. And it's moving into a place where you are focusing on what when you look at like the reflection pool and journaling, those will give you ideas that will shift over time, and you can actually notice what is helpful, and you can notice the small things that you might not have noticed when you're in the midst of the conversation, or even if it's like a mentee, if they're in the midst of the crisis. Consider when you're looking at that, what areas would you like to strengthen? And I think this kind of ties into some of the IMC competencies about reflection and integration, feedback integration. It's this idea that if we can utilize the information and have that allow us to become a better mentee or mentor and allow our mentees to have a better work experience, I think that has a huge, huge influence. And the journaling is something that's, now with the advent of AI, there's so much more you can actually do with being able to track the things that are going on. So even if it's something that's difficult for a person, there is technology and ways to do this now that it becomes quite easy. And this can become a reflection mirror so that your personal development can tie into your journaling. It's keeping track of the experiences that you have and learning from them. And I think that that's a really positive way to move forward. So if we're looking at a final challenge that we have here, and this is an idea that we'd like to focus before your next mentoring session. Practice shifting your own energy, your own sense of awareness. Maybe use a thing called mindfulness where you show up. There's an exercise that I'll talk about at the end of this. Just it can be as simple as taking a pause and breathing. And no matter what's going on in your world, just allow yourself to take a pause and drop below the surface and show up for that person fully. If you can do that, you'll actually connect to a place of confidence, a place of leadership, and it'll have a huge influence over that session. It'll allow you to lead from a place of intention. There's a story that goes along with this, and one of my mentee, and it was funny because when I first started, I didn't consider myself a mentor, and I didn't have a mentee when I first came about. I didn't realize that the International Mentoring Center existed. If I did, I would have gladly learned and progressed. But this person came to me and they said, "Steve, will you be my mentor?" And I thought, what am I going to teach you? I had no idea how to be a mentor. I didn't have any structure. And so I thought, well, let me teach these ideas that I've learned in life, these ideas about emotional regulation. Let me teach these ideas about personal responsibility, of being intentional with who we are. Let me teach these ideas about self-awareness, about non-judgment, about acceptance. And as I did that, what I found was those are skills that can be transferred to other people. And it turned out that there was a period of my life, not too long, as she would talk to me, I was just in this very positive place of being. Just an overall sense of positive well-being, quite happy, just feeling connected and high sense of self-worth. It felt good. It felt special. And so I was talking to her about this, and what I said to her is, several years back, I was in a relationship, and I was actually in that phase of love, and I thought, what a beautiful experience, because the nature was more beautiful, the experiences were more beautiful, rainy days were more beautiful, the sunsets were more beautiful, and so I made that intention of realizing that we can practice any emotional state we choose. And so I was practicing getting back to that sense of well-being, that sense of love without connection to anyone else, practicing that in how I felt. And I think that that is that experience of what they call agape love. It's that sense of overall well-being and positivity. It's unconditional. And so as we were talking about that, I was sharing these ideas. She had been going through a very difficult time at home, and she had a boss that was quite difficult. So the boss was giving her a hard time, telling her that she didn't do her job well, that she was incompetent, very harsh and critical words. And finally, one day, she stood up to her boss and she said, I can, you're probably right, but she didn't have a sense of feeling bad about it. She said she knew she did a good job. She knew she did well. And when she responded that way, her boss had a different response in the way that she was acting towards her. What changed for her is that her boss now viewed her in a different way, because maybe because she wasn't rattled by the comments, maybe because she said it with a smile, but I think it was mostly because of her energy. It had such an impact that one time a customer came into the place of work and had just a full out conflict, yelling, shouting. It was quite severe. This was a VP level person, and they came in to my mentee's office and they said, "Can I just sit with you for a minute?" This was what I first mentioned when I talked, that this idea that just our presence can be enough. When that happened, the shift that experienced for her boss, the mentee didn't say anything, didn't try to fix anything. She just sat with her and created that space until that emotion shifted. And then once it shifted, her boss got up and said, "Thank you," and then went on about her day. That was something that lifted the confidence level of my friend. And now that she's dealing with a new senior manager, someone that is not very responsive, someone that's having her wait and delaying her work, these skills are things that she's utilizing in being a better person and being a better employee. So the skill that I wanted to leave you with was this idea of meeting somebody for the first time. It's that idea of, even with your mentees, it's removing what you expect from that meeting. It's removing what you expect from that person. And it's just showing up with curiosity. The example that I would give is that you're walking on a boardwalk, and just imagine that you're passing the person, that you see them, that there's familiarity. It doesn't mean that you forget everything that happened. It means that you detach your emotional connection or understanding of what existed before you meet with them. And in that space of curiosity, it's noticing what comes up. So what we'd like to focus on here is, if you can be the calm in someone else's storm, you first do that by becoming calm yourself. It's this idea that by shifting your energy, by shifting how you are, it'll have a huge impact on them. And that is the modeling that they will get as well. It's something that they will learn from you just by you doing that. And that's the end. I know I'm about 7 minutes early, but we can talk about some of the ideas that we can focus on here. So the idea is, if you want to reach out to me, please feel to reach out at Stephen@globalsummitevents.org. And the biggest focus that I'd like to have you take away from today is realize the greatest impact that you can have in somebody else's life are the things that are the simplest and often the things that you overlook. By just showing up, by just sitting with somebody, by just accepting them how they are without trying to fix it. All of these things have a huge impact on not only their experience, but their ability to self-regulate, to shift in their personal experience. And there's one thing that I noticed about people that are on this self-awareness journey, and it's something that you can share with other people. What they will start doing is they'll start reframing the meaning and what they believe happened. So often something bad can happen, and it'll cause like a worry, a fear, anxiety, stress. But if you can reframe this idea, if you can change it in your mind, that will be the biggest thing that you can do to have an influence. There was an idea that I learned within the hypnotherapy class. And this is something that if you can remember an experience, and we always use this idea of a lemon. If you can imagine actually peeling a lemon, and as you peel it, you can smell that citrusy smell, fresh and tart. And then you can imagine pulling back that, the peel and seeing the white and then seeing the flesh inside. As you do that, if you imagine seeing the juices squirting out of that lemon and smelling that lemon, if you bite into it, almost every one of us would experience our mouth watering, because that response is the body responding to what you were thinking about. If we practice that within our mind, if we actually practice feeling the way that we choose to feel, that experienced feeling, that thought is more powerful than the actual experience. And the reason it's more powerful is because you can move that around in your body. You can expand it, you can contract it, you can utilize it in a way that is most beneficial. And if you can practice those skills, there's so many things that you can learn where you can show up in a different way. The hardest thing to shift in our life is what we believe to be true, because we have no reason to question it. We have no reason to look at it. But if you can look at your life and say, okay, what is working for me? What possibilities might exist that I haven't considered yet? Then from that space of curiosity, from that space of acceptance and non-judgment, sometimes there can be the greatest influence, the greatest impact. And one last thing is that some of the most difficult people that my clients and my mentees have dealt with, they turned out to be their strongest allies, the most challenging, the ones that gave them the hardest time. They actually became the greatest adversaries. They're the ones that had the greatest loyalty. They put forward the greatest effort. And so it's knowing when to invest that time, to focus on the relationship and to grow from there. So thank you all for participating, and I look forward to the feedback. And thank you so much, Aline.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that amazing presentation. We already have 3 questions in the Q&A bar. So please, if you have any other questions, feel free to share. So can you see the questions, Stephen, or do you want me to share it with you?
Let me go ahead and share them because I can't see them yet. Now I probably can.
So click on Q&A, or I can share it. I can tell you.
Okay, so I see when I'm under stress, my tendency is to dominate. My tendency to dominate can increase. What strategies can I implement to maintain emotional intelligence and adapt my communication style to be more softening or reassuring, particularly with people I care about or influence, rather than just pushing for results? So this is a key one. And what I believe this comes from is modeling. When we're under stress, we have ways that have worked for us. And some cultures, they have pushed through their entire life. Their schools were high stress, their expectations were high stress. So the idea is not to judge it, because so often that's worked for the entire life for the person. But what it also is realizing here is that it's becoming more aware of that. So as you notice it, you've already done the huge first step of noticing. The second thing is it's noticing what works. So if you snap when you're under pressure, that's a perfect time to breathe. It's like, okay, before I respond, I'm going to take a few deep breaths. And it may sound silly, but it's allowing that to open up. The second thing is asking. When you're talking about communication style, instead of being dominant or to pressure, it's saying it's enlisting the support of the person that you're working with. And this is a leadership quality. If you want to be a great leader, enlist those around you and help them become better leaders themselves. So as you elevate those around you, you will elevate yourself. And that's what I would focus on constantly reminding yourself that people are not good or bad, that there's different levels of skill. And as you practice on learning your skills and teaching those to others, then you'll grow in this. So what you're experiencing here is a skill, and it's responding to that. So that's what I would say is practice it as a skill and see how you can change that. The next question is, what specific actionable techniques can I use in a moment to quickly gauge if my assertiveness is being perceived as intimidating by others? You can't. You can't. There's their perception is their perception. Even if it's wrong, they're going to perceive what they want to perceive. And most of the time, it has nothing to do with you. Their perception will be based on what they had to eat that day, the workload they're under, their relationship at home, their finances, their pain level. It has less to do with you than it does to do with their own little world at the moment. So the better question here is, when is your assertiveness beneficial? Right. And it's start noticing the interaction of others. And this is where you can use immediacy. So if you see on somebody's face, they pull back or they could become withdrawn, mention that. Say, I noticed that you're becoming withdrawn. What are you thinking? What's going on? And by learning from that, you'll realize that it either has something to do with what you said or miscommunication or something else. So the last one was, what happens if the mentee keeps lying about their progress each time the mentor asks on their progress stage in their projects and consistently procrastinate to the last minute before submitting their work? So this is usually a stress response because you've got fight, flight, freeze. The reason that people will lie, so most people will say, I'm an honest person. But if you have somebody that their core value of avoiding conflict or trying to please the other person is higher on the hierarchy than honesty, they will lie because they're going to try to tell you what you want to hear. So as a mentor, the best thing that you can do is to create a safe environment where you're not judging them. You're not coming down hard. And that's really difficult for people that are task oriented, because you're like, what are we doing? If you're not going to do the work, why are we even having this relationship? And this is what I was talking about before. Rather than judging them for what's going on, start trying to find out, okay, what is holding you up? Become curious. What different techniques can we use that might be helpful? I always was curious about these accountability groups, because it's like, why can't people just, do it themselves? And one of the things that someone said is the best accountability partner is a 10-year-old. You say, I'll give you $10 to ask me what I'm going to do, and then ask me at the end of the week what I did. And if you do that, you're gonna have accountability. But the thing is it's understanding, why is the person involved in the mentor, and then the biggest thing that I think can be beneficial for you is to realize, what is the trigger for me, and what can I learn from this about myself? Because it really has, when you're dealing with situations where someone's doing something that's triggering you in effect, the best thing that we can do is to learn from that.
Thank you, Stephen. We also have another question in the chat from Wazit. What's your ideas to apply NLP modeling in executive mentoring?
Well, there's a couple things there, and so NLP was based on hypnotherapy, and Milton Erickson was one of the people that they focused upon. It's this idea of it's using the language and the words of the people that you're speaking to, and there's great power in that, because if you reflect back the language of the words that people are using, they feel acknowledged, they feel heard. There's a connection that's created, and if there's a sense of connection, then people will have a positive takeaway from that experience. And the way I kind of focus more on the hypnotherapy than specifically, but there are some techniques that you can use within NLP. My focus is more about how you can use this in a positive, constructive way. There is the dark NLP where it's manipulative and assertive. I don't know that that's a long-term gain, because what it does is it's like what you experience if you've ever been for the where they sell the timeshares. You go and they say, oh, come in, we'll give you a free dinner or a free stay, and you can just attend this 1 hour seminar. And then they do such high pressure sales techniques that it's uncomfortable. But what they're doing is they're using all of the words that put you into a box. And I don't think we should ever do that with our mentees or our mentors. The overall goal should be for personal development and for overall effectiveness rather than trying to get people to do what we want them to do. We should be there as an aid and as a guide. And that means that sometimes we need to step back a little bit and have a softer approach.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. I think we don't have any other question. I'm just checking. No, I think we covered them all. Okay. Okay. Yes, before we close up, I just want to take a moment to reflect on the value of what Stephen shared with us today, from emotional regulation and resilience to empowered leadership and mindful mentoring. Today's sessions reminded us of the deep connection between inner well-being and our ability to lead and support others effectively. So remember, these tools and strategies are not just theoretical. They are practical steps you can take to stay grounded, present, and impactful in your mentoring journey. So thank you again, Stephen, for sharing your time, wisdom, energy with us today. It was truly amazing. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope you found the session meaningful and inspiring. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be shared with you shortly by email. And keep an eye out for more IMC webinars and events coming up soon. I would like to learn more and if you would like to learn more and get involved with your community, visit us at mentoringcenter.org. And I'm wishing you all the best as you continue to grow as mentors and leaders. So have a wonderful rest of your day and take good care. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.